Have you experienced the awesome power of the Panasonic Real 3DO system? Obviously.
Presenting 3DO, the most advanced home gaming system in the universe. It's time to put away your toys.
3DO from Panasonic, Gold Star, and Creative Labs. A new low price and free games.
Mind-blowing graphics of Panasonic Real 3DO.
3DO.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 3DO Experience, the 3DO retrospective podcast where we talk about all things 3DO, the 3DO company, the console, and everything in between. I am Bill, and this is Threk. How you doing, Threk?
Oh, I'm doing just fine, Bill. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It was 70 degrees today, so that was fun.
How was the eclipse?
We didn't die, so that the idiots on TikTok are all sad now.
I mean, why would you believe them?
I didn't. I just laughed because the last time we had an eclipse was 2017, and TikTok didn't exist, I believe, at the time.
No, it did. I think it did. Yeah, it didn't blow up yet.
Yeah, it wasn't huge yet, so you didn't have the brain rot that's on that platform nowadays. And
TikTok started in September of 2016.
Okay, it was probably back when it was so small, though, and no one really paid attention to it yet.
Yeah, because if I remember, it was from the ashes of Vine, because Vine started in 2013, and that ended like early 2017.
Yeah.
So, and then it was like right after Vine died was when TikTok really started blowing up. And I remember thinking, that's a stupid name for an app. There's no way that's going to keep going. And, well, it kind of runs the world now.
See, I remember because there used to be ads for it on YouTube all the time. And I always remember
the ads for it.
See, I went into the ad program because you can actually flag certain ads to not play on your feed, and they'll just give you other ads. And I made sure early on to get those out of my feed.
Well, for my computer that I'm recording this on, I just have an ad blocker, and like YouTube tried to nerf those ad blockers, but the ad blocker guys were always one step ahead. So thanks, guys. And I think YouTube gave up.
I think they have at this point too,
because they were trying really hard. And I remember like Googling, like, oh, how do I get? Oh shit, ladies and gentlemen, we lost him. He's gone. Anyways, but like the uBlock Origin guys would always stay one step ahead with the coding. So they're like, oh, just do like click this setting, do this thing, refresh, and you're good. So that's how it happened, basically. And yeah, like the YouTube guys kind of gave up on the ad blocking thing. So I think they realized it wasn't they were never going to win. You know, no matter how big of an online corporation you are, you will never win against random just online weirdos who know this stuff better than you do. You'll never beat them. So this might not be in the video version, but I'm just going to ramble. So how y'all doing? We're talking about ass back. Yeah. The ass is to the back. I amused myself too much. We'll get into more detail eventually. So I'm just amusing myself now. So this is fun. Did Bill die? Oh boy.
Am I back?
What the hell was that?
My entire laptop just said, fuck all your connections, and just turned everything off. And I'm really, oh, fuck.
So now you have like a minute and a half of me rambling.
Oh, that's the worst. The funniest part is I could hear it all. I'm like,
oh, great. Yeah. You're gonna have to do some editing now.
No, I'll leave it in. It was fun.
Okay. All right. Fine.
It was fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could have said something really bad, but I didn't.
So the video is going to just have me disappear for a few minutes and then come back.
The audio feed is going to be better because they're like, oh, what happened? And everyone's like, what are you talking about?
Thank God the recording didn't stop. That's good. Anyways, so yeah, the eclipse happened. We went outside and looked at it for like 5 minutes. I mostly used it as an excuse to get some fresh air. So
Yeah. See, where I was when the eclipse fully happened, it got super fucking dark. And like so dark to the point that literally I could just look up and be like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." And then as soon as it started to drift in the sun, I was like, "Okay, I've seen enough. I've seen enough." And I saw people were looking like the top trending search on Google was "Why do my eyes hurt?"
yeah, dumbasses. We had
Funny.
we had
My eyes are fine. Well, as fine as they can be, but
we had one pair of eclipse glasses. We were all just kind of passing them around.
Yeah, fair enough.
The best was one of my older coworkers. He had like one of the old school shoe boxes cut out, and he's over in the corner,
Yeah.
like staring the opposite direction. He's like, "You guys are losers. This is the real way to do it." And we're just like, "Okay."
God, such an old man thing of like, oh, it was better in my day when it was harder to do, but it was just what I liked as a child. And it's like, dude, you fucking suck. Like, there's a reason we don't do that anymore, man.
It was kind of cool, I will admit,
Like,
but at the same
yeah,
time,
but
it
like,
was
yeah, appreciate modern technology, you fogies.
yeah. So that happened.
So speaking of old shit, we're gonna be talking about Flashback today, the quest for identity.
Yes,
And I think that's the running theme of this episode because you are on a quest to identify your opinion on this game.
yeah.
Yes.
So
It's what I like about it is that it's one of the most readily available games on the planet.
yes,
It doesn't matter what you have, you can play this game, which I think is a good thing.
yes. This game actually was in the Guinness Book of World Records for a long time as the most successful French-developed game of all time.
I believe that. Has that been overtaken?
There's got to be some Ubisoft game that did better. Like at least
But is
one of
Ubisoft still considered French though?
the Montpellier studio is. I know that.
Okay. It's just they've become like a worldwide thing because they have studios everywhere. So I don't know. I just don't view them as French anymore. Like people probably would.
I mean, Atari's technically French when you think about it in a roundabout way.
I don't know. I associate Atari with like pre-Silicon Valley, like California.
Well, that Atari's long gone. The Atari we have
know.
now is just Infogrames cosplaying as Atari.
Yeah. You know all about cosplay, don't you?
Not as much as Alex. I've done it a few times though.
Yeah. I've never done it. I don't know if I ever will.
It's fun. Unless you like don't like people, then it's not.
Well, some of the ones I would be down to do, I'd have to shave, and I'm like, I don't want to get rid of this because the moment I get rid of this, you're all gonna say, just grow it back.
I mean, you could totally.
I promise. If you saw me without this, you'd be horrified.
You could totally cosplay as like Red Era Robert Fripp.
Yeah, I do have that look.
Not so much the 80s period because he had like that like old man in the business suit look going on at that point.
Yeah. Well, he was wearing like the really low cut tank tops with all his hair popping out. Yeah, he's looking hot.
Totally.
There's an interview he did. I think it was like with MTV, where like the whole start of it is him just eating like truffles and just being like, "Oh, these are so fucking good truffles, man."
He is a very interesting man. I'm sure there's a podcast about him somewhere.
If by interesting you mean autistic.
Yeah.
Like it's apparent, but it made some great music. Anyways, Flashback, 1992.
Before we get into it, I have to share this because this was hilarious to me. So I bought this at Retro World last year, and I hadn't opened it yet because honestly, if I'm playing this game, I'm usually probably going to play the Switch port. But so I opened it to play it for the review, and the first thing I see when I open the top of the box is the CD case is open, and it literally says Wing Commander 3, and I was like, "Oh no, you got to be kidding me!" Thankfully, that's just the case. It is Flashback, like disc and all.
What happened to that case?
Who knows? Honestly,
man.
Probably they just replaced it and did away with it that way. But the other fun thing is, rather than a big manual, for some reason they decided to include the SNES version strategy guide.
Hey, all right. Is there any hot tips and tricks in there? like a secret like level code.
I mean, we got the game line thing that you had as well.
Yeah, before the stream, I called that number to see if it still existed. Sadly, it does not.
So
I should
going,
have done it. I should have done it on the show.
we learned, I guess.
I'm too content pilled.
So, it's mostly just a strategy guide to get through the game. The controls are all for the SNES versions, so they don't really match. And I will say this thing has been foxed really bad, and it smells like an old book.
Oh
So-
yeah, I know that old book smell. Whenever you go into like a used bookstore or a library, you all know that. You all know that smell.
See, I love foxing on books because it's like you'll go on any book collector's subreddit and you get all these people being like, "Is my book rotting?" And it's like, no, that's just how books are.
It's fine. Your book is aging. Like, imagine if we didn't know our faces like wrinkled, and one day we woke up and there was that, and we're like, "What the fuck? Is my face gonna fall off?" Like, it'd be nice, but no.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
just a bunch of skulls with eyeballs walking around, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, that was my fun little like what the hell with this long box.
Like you paid a lot of money for that, and it didn't like come complete, but it came with like an extra goodie. So
My guess is the person who sold this to me didn't even open it. They just assumed.
yeah. Does the SNES version have passwords as well?
Yes.
Do they work on the 3DO version?
I don't know. That is actually a really good question that I could look into at some point.
Yeah.
Because so I guess going into it, this game was actually originally developed for the Genesis.
It was, yeah.
But it came out on the Amiga first, which is kind of funny.
Well, it's come out on a multitude of systems. It's come out on the Amiga, the Acorn Archimedes, the Genesis, DOS, NEC PC 9801, Super NES, Sega CD, FM Towns, 3DO, CDI, Atari Jaguar, Mac OS, iOS, the Symbian, the Maimo, the Dreamcast, Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and now PS5 and Series X through backwards compatibility. And I don't even think the Dreamcast version's official.
So I think it's kind of Fade. I think the way it worked is Flashback is included in this game's sequel, Fade to Black, as like a bonus. I think, and
Probably.
Fade to Black was recently ported to Dreamcast. So
well, the Dreamcast version, it says on this, it came out in 2017, and the Dreamcast version that Fade to Black was 2018. So
okay,
so,
I don't know.
but if the original Flashback is in Fade to Black as like a bonus, then it's technically on the PlayStation 1 as well.
I might be pulling that out of my ass, so don't quote me on that.
Well, I can say that I played the remake of this that came out in I think 2013 for the PS3 and the 360, and that does come with the original Flashback in it.
That might be what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of.
And well, I played and beat the remake, which you clearly cannot see here, but that's what I beat. The version that I beat. And I played a bit of the original like right after, and it's probably the worst version of the original that I've played, and I've played a handful of them now. So yeah, if you want to play the original version of this game, I highly recommend the Switch version or on the PlayStation or the Xbox, like the 25th anniversary edition that helps a bit. Yeah,
I'll save it for later, but there's another version that's special in its own way. I'll save it when we talk about like some of the aspects of the game. So this game was developed by Delphine Software. They're a French company. They're known mostly for technically developing Another World, but if you want to be realistic, Another World was a one-man team created by Eric Shahai, I think his name is pronounced.
I think Shahai sounds right.
Shahai, yeah. He made the game single-handedly.
Eric, because he's French. Eric,
yes. He made the game single-handedly, so technically it's more he made the game and Delphine just kind of put their name on it.
But didn't he start working for them?
He did, because he also worked on their previous game, Future Wars,
Future Wars.
which is a point and click adventure game.
Yeah, they've made quite a few point and click adventure games. And you know what else Delphine Software made?
Why Am I in Tokyo?
No. One of the most infamous games ever made. Shaq Fu.
You didn't get my reference.
No, I didn't. No.
That's because Shaq's just randomly in Tokyo, and my
Oh,
reference
fuck yeah. Yeah,
is
you're right.
why am I?
Yeah,
Why
he
am I in
goes in,
Tokyo?
and then he goes into the shop, and the old guy's like, "Hey, go in this like portal and save this kid." And Shaq's like, "Why?" He's like, "Don't ask questions, just fucking do it." And then you do, and then you play a very average fighting game.
Yeah,
Like if I can tangent real quick, I honestly don't think Shaq Fu is that bad. Like as a fighting game, like it's not great, but when I played it on the Genesis, like I had a physical copy of it, I was like, it's not as like it doesn't control as bad as everybody said it did, you know, but it's still not great.
no, it's like it's
I,
in the
I think
same category as like Kasumi Ninja, Way of the Warrior. It's just bad fighting games.
well, this is better than Way of the Warrior by the fucking mile. Because I can actually feel like I'm in control of my character while I'm doing this. And yeah, Shaq Fu has gained a reputation, but like hell, if you've played that Michael Jordan and Windy City like fucking thing, that's way worse than this.
Yeah,
Don't-
that's a
Chaos
game.
in Windy City. I wish that had a 3DO port so we could talk about it.
There's also Revolution X, the Aerosmith rail shooter.
Delphine made that?
No, that's just a game. We're talking
Yeah.
about random games with celebrities for no reason.
Yeah. Oh yeah, apparently, yeah, Chaos in the Windy City. It was supposed to get a Genesis port, but it never happened. So unfortunately, I cannot play it for the Genesis stream, which that would have been a great thing. And the designer on that game is your favorite, Miss Amy Henning. So one of the first things she did.
Good lord.
Yeah. It was like her first game as a designer.
Yeah, you can only go up.
I mean, right after that, she went to Legacy of Kain. So
Yeah.
good for
I mean,
her.
Mark Cerny technically worked on Crash and Burn, so he only went up from there.
Yeah, boy. Just all these weird tangents, you know. And then Delphine started making the Moto Racer series. I'm sure you have some opinion on it.
Believe it or not, one of the few PlayStation racers I don't own.
Man, there's a handful of them too.
Yeah, there's 3 anyways, and a Game Boy Advance one.
Oh, is this one of the real pricey ones? Because there's a handful of GBA racers that are like really pricey, which says to me they were ones that what's his name, Metal Jesus really liked.
Yeah.
Because he likes his racers, which I respect, but whenever he would like praise the shit out of a racer, and then I'd look at the price, I'm like, why is it so fucking expensive? I'd be like, oh, it's probably because he was like, dude, this game's fucking sick. Yeah, Moto Racer Advance, it's like $170 right now. Thanks,
Probably.
guys. Thanks, fuckers. I'm not mad at Metal Jesus. I'm mad at everybody else.
Metal Jesus is such a nice guy. Like, I don't get the hate he gets because of stuff like that. It's like,
yeah.
like
I love every couple months he makes a video about how fat he is now.
yeah.
And it's like he's not even like that. He's just a little. He's a little chubbier, but nothing insane.
My favorite
I
is
just think it's funny he does that, you know. And it's like, is he just scraping for content that week?
My favorite is he used to work for Sierra, and he actually he was in one of the Sierra games as like a guitar player in a band.
Yeah, he does like to talk about working at Sierra a lot.
I mean, it's fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. But he doesn't. I don't know how much he's like talked about actually like working there. He just like referencing that he worked there. But like, what games did he work on when he was there?
So I haven't listened to it in a while because I really am not a fan of the creator in particular. But he was on Pat Contre's podcast where he interviews people, and he did go into it pretty deep there.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of Pat, so I don't really listen to it frequently. But I remember liking that interview.
Yeah. What don't you like about Pat? Is he a little too abrasive?
He just comes off as a smug asshole.
Oh, absolutely. But I think it's because he's like a New Yorker.
Yeah,
I think they all just come off like that. But I
yeah.
get it. I get it.
Nothing against the guy personally. I just never liked his content.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I much prefer like Jeff Gertzman, who can come off as a smug asshole, but he remains entertaining the entire
Yeah.
time. You know, like
Uh,
like another tangent. I for some reason my YouTube Rex was when he was still a giant bomb and they were talking about the Link's Awakening remake. And
Yeah.
somebody was like, "Oh, the art style is polarizing," and Jeff just like got pissed. He's like, "Is this fucking Wind Waker all over again?" He's like, "You idiots!"
Yeah.
It was hilarious.
So interesting thing about Flashback, the game is the game, as the way to describe it is, it's a cinematic platformer, which is a style of platformer that doesn't really exist anymore, kind of.
It feels like the last game to kind of do it was maybe like the original Tomb Raider.
To a degree, yeah, I'd say. I mean, you can make a stretch and say like games like Uncharted are trying to also be a more modern take on a cinematic platformer, but
Kind of, but like platforming isn't necessarily the big thing with Uncharted. That's more like the climbing and that stuff, that's which is
yeah,
different than platforming, I think.
it's a more realistic take on platforming, I guess you could say.
Sure.
Um,
But when we say cinematic platformer, we're referring to like the original Prince of Persia,
yes,
Another World, Heart of Darkness, like the early Oddworld games, Blackthorn.
Blackthorn is an important one.
Yeah,
Lester the Unlikely.
Lester the
I
like
have a box copy of that.
those rotoscoped games because they all have like the rotoscope animation.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, more proper, maybe modern takes would be like Limbo or Inside.
True.
Those I think are closer to that, but those games are doing something I think completely different. But I could see the connection. But yeah, those games that like prioritize that really nice, like realistic animation of the characters, like doing the very specific like jump up to a ledge and then climb up it and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
And
I had seen someone describe these games as they're kind of like platformers that you have to take a few minutes to figure out how to play, and then once you figure it out, you get it. It makes sense.
yeah, they're not pick up and play at all.
No,
but it
not at
feels
all.
like that they were never intended to be pick up and play. Like you have to, yeah, sort of meet the game halfway a little bit to sort of figure out what it is and what it's trying to do. Like even like a friend of the show, Burger Champ, described it as they're more like kind of rhythm games.
Yeah. It's interesting because this game is heavily compared to Another World / Out of This World, depending on the version. Which I see the similarities, particularly with the Genesis version and its cinematic cutscenes that it went with. But honestly, in terms of gameplay, this game is actually a lot more like Blackthorn in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I think I played Blackthorn like once on like a 32X emulator.
Yeah, like the way to describe like Out of This World is very much about platforming and like dodging things.
Yeah, Another World is closer to the original Prince of Persia. Like both of those
Yes.
games are very similar to each other.
Blackthorn, on the other hand, had more of an emphasis on like shooting, which is very present in Flashback,
Yeah, it's trying to be more action based, I think.
which is a bit of its detriment in the long run.
Yeah, because I've watched some people like play this, like YouTube playthroughs, and it's pretty impressive how people are able to figure it out. But at the same time, even they're struggling with it, So
It's a game that like looks like once you master it, it's really fun to just kind of go through. But getting over that hump and like really figuring out the controls is not the easiest thing in the world.
yeah, it's not like mastering, say, Dragon's Lair or Space Ace, because once you master that, you can play the game whenever, kind of thing. Where it feels like Flashback requires a certain type of reflex that you really have to like woodshed to get it just right. And even in playing the remake, like the remake is much more approachable, but even then, it still keeps a lot of the spirit of the original game, and it's kind of, I guess, clunkiness, if I dare say.
Yeah, rotoscoped games in general haven't aged amazingly. Like, there's a few that have. Like, Another World has aged pretty well.
Oh
If I
yeah,
was
I think Another World is fantastic. I fucking love Another World.
That was just a very well programmed game, even for the time.
I think because the game design is built around the animation.
Yes.
Whereas I don't think Flashback is. Like, kind of my biggest issue with Flashback is it wants to be much more of a heavy action based game. But when you have all of these very specific animations and trying to have it look a certain way, it's like clashing with the game design. And it can become more frustrating than fun. It's, if any of you watched my Genesis stream and I was playing that James Bond game, it's kind of a similar feel, you know. But with James Bond, you're not going in thinking it's going to be like a rotoscope type of animation. You know what I mean? You expect it to be more snappy. With Flashback, you know what you're getting into, and the game design. It's definitely, the more you play it and the more you acquaint yourself with it, you can figure it out. You definitely can. The puzzle is playing the game.
Yeah.
You know.
And speaking of puzzles, like traditionally with a rotoscope style of platformer, puzzles are kind of a big part of the gameplay. Where there's kind of like one of the biggest parts of getting through this game's levels is you kind of have to figure out how, and that's kind of the puzzle of it in a way.
Yeah, but it's very easy to get frustrated at these games, I think. At least it
Yes.
was for me, because
Oh, no.
oh god.
I tried to beat Lester the Unlikely. I can understand, because god damn it, these games, when not designed well, are very frustrating.
Yeah, like even beating Another World, which I did on Switch quite a few years back. Like, that game definitely had its frustrating moments, but I just think the design of that game is just much stronger, and it doesn't feel as impenetrable as something like Flashback can feel at times.
To
You
me,
know?
the biggest the weakest aspect of this game is the combat in a lot of
Oh,
ways.
combat's fucking dog shit. Oh, it's so bad.
It's like
And
this
it, like,
game.
and you only have like a few hit points,
Yes.
and there are like saves, but the 3DO version, I think, like, it has a password system, so
So
it's like technically a level based game.
the way this game saves is really weird. It doesn't have a traditional save system. It has passwords, like Thrax said, but it also has kind of like quick saves within the levels where you'll reach a certain point and the game will be like saved here. It's basically a glorified checkpoint, and
Yeah.
it stays active as long as the game is on. The second you turn the game off, though, it's gone.
Yeah, so it's definitely a game that it's so weird for a game that's trying to be cinematic, and you can tell they knew people weren't going to sit down and beat this in one sitting, that they wouldn't try to fit a save system in this. I mean, I know even in the Genesis days, having saves on cartridges weren't always the most feasible. But even, and Delphine probably weren't like the biggest company either, but it felt like it would have helped the game like a long way, like having a save system, because the remake has a very healthy, like, kind of modern checkpoint system where, like,
Yes.
just about anything major you do, the game just gives you a checkpoint, which makes the remake much more instantly playable from like a modern perspective. But it's, my biggest issue with the remake is that it's trying too hard to be like hip with the kids, as I say, rather than like embracing the sort of the style of the original, you know, because the remake is kind of butt ugly, and is
Yeah.
a bit of a buggy mess, and like a lot of the dialogue rewrites are really dumb. Like, you can tell this game is dated from the moment Conrad, who I believe is the name of our protagonist,
Yes.
says "awesome sauce."
Ugh.
When I heard that come out of his mouth, I knew what era we were in.
So what's funny is this game was trying to be hip and trendy when it came out, so it's actually kind of appropriate that the remake is equally as cringe.
Yeah, I guess. Well, but the thing is, 92 Flashback isn't cringe. least
No,
not for
but
me. It's a
not.
game that, like, yeah, it maybe is cringe if it's like, oh, you don't like looking at like early CD, like 3D, like polygonal stuff, but there's like a charm to it.
Well, yeah, it's a charming kind of cringe. Like that's cringe isn't the best word because it's not really bad. It's just like it is very clearly of a certain era.
Yeah, like what I like about the original Flashback, or what I like about going back to these type of games where you can tell they are pushing the medium forward, like they're really trying to do something new in the video game genre, and I think that's great, and I'm always willing to respect that and be like, let's see what it is, even if it looks goofy. Like a lot of the cutscenes say in Another World, like they look goofy as hell by today's standards, but I always give them a pass because at that time that was really cool.
Hmm.
Whereas like Flashback 2013, it's not pushing the medium forward in any way. It's not
No,
doing anything groundbreaking.
you,
So
you
I'm
know,
not willing to give it any, even though the original designer was working on the remake, it still, it doesn't help much.
yeah, you know what the best kind of description for the remake is, like the best comparison, I should say. Um, it's a game that's lost now. You can't play anymore. But the TMNT 4 reshelled,
Yes, I remember Reshelled.
like the most
Ooh.
like it tried, but like you played and you're like, this is just kind of like it looks worse somehow, and it's
Like
not as fun.
TMNT Turtles in Time Reshelled is the ultimate way of not doing a remake. And like I remember playing it, I'm like, yeah, this is the same game, but it was in that era, in like the 360 PS3 era, where people just thought that the nicer graphics would just be enough.
Hmm.
And like a lot of these remakes or a lot of games from this era just don't have any like good art direction.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
Um,
they're just focused on like, oh, having like nice like looking graphics and nice models, but there's no like idea as far as like, oh, what do we want this game to look like? It's almost like that kind of Gears thing. Like Flashback kind of looks like a Gears game a little bit,
yeah,
but Gears gets away with it because it was like kind of the first to do that, and
that art style also fits the Gears universe very well.
exactly. And if you go through the series, it eventually like the color palette switches up, and Gears has like a really engrossing story with great characters and all of that stuff. So it's able to make up for that, I think. Whereas the Flashback remake really doesn't. So
No.
even though the original looks far worse, I much prefer its art style.
Yeah. It's just like it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you made it better, but also not better at the same time.
Exactly. Like I get wanting to modernize a game like this, but in a way, it almost does take away from what made the original so special in its day.
That's actually one thing that I feel like the 3DO version kind of doesn't do great is one of the things that made this game so iconic was those cinematics from the Genesis and original, like the original versions. In
Yes,
the 3DO version, it uses full motion video CGI cutscenes, which look fine.
they
Until
fit.
you
They fit in better than you'd think.
they do, until you realize they're just cleaned up versions from the Sega CD version.
Yeah,
Um, and then you find out when you play this 3DO game, aside from cleaning up the graphics, 3DO version really doesn't add anything that makes this version this worthwhile.
yeah, not really. It's definitely like if you want to play this game, like hell, I'd probably recommend playing the Genesis version over this one. Because probably playing the Genesis version has more of a like that feeling of like, oh, this is the original, this is how it was meant to be played at the time kind of feel to it. You know what I mean?
It
Like a game
feels the best on a Genesis controller.
yeah, like a game made specifically for like playing a game on the platform it was meant to be like played on feels a lot different than playing like say a really good port. Even though I
Yes.
think we would both say like the modern versions on Switch, PlayStation, all that are the one to play if you want to play this game.
Um,
There
I
is something
figure
about emulating the Genesis version and kind of getting that feel.
true. I will say, I guess now is a good time to bring it up. The Sega CD version in particular is pretty noteworthy. It's basically the Genesis version in terms of gameplay and like graphics. It has the CGI like full motion video cutscenes. The one defining thing about the Sega CD version, and it's only in the Sega CD version, it has a full soundtrack, like, and music plays in every single level, something that the no other version does. It's
How is
mostly
how is the music on there?
it's really good. Like it fully fleshes out everything. It's like orchestral at times, and like it, because the one issue I have with this game in particular is the fact that the music kind of it's there, but it dies out a lot in levels, and you just get a lot of ambiance.
Yeah, and the sound design in this game I don't think is very good.
No,
Um,
the Genesis version is the only version that got the sound design right.
yeah, because like 3DO version, it's very blank,
Yes.
and like the little bit of like incidental noise you get isn't really all that interesting.
Yeah, the Genesis is very harsh sound card, really hit it out of the park in terms of
Yeah.
this game's music, especially the Genesis's use of bass,
Oh yeah.
um, which was carried over into the CD version. Only now it's streaming like Redbook Audio, which just sounds amazing. And there's actual voice acting in gameplay levels thanks to the Sega CD.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It's the Sega CD version is worth playing just for the added like goodies and like little like quality of life improvements that are only present in that version. It's bizarre to me that they did not carry any of that over to the 3DO version.
Yeah. Is that in the? I don't think it's in the newer versions either.
No,
Because
it's
because
only
because on like say when I got this on the Xbox, I remember like you have an option of playing like a classic version and then like a more modern version, which all it really does is like give you tutorial bits, let you rewind when you mess up, and have like more kind of modern like audio and music and all that. But if I want, say, the modern features, but with like the old audio, it won't let me do that as far as I know.
yeah,
Like it's kind of wonky in that way.
yeah, it's weird. That soundtrack is only in the CD version though, which is just bizarre to me. Like
Yeah,
don't
I'm gonna have to check that out.
it's I mean it's not like it doesn't make that version worth like tracking down if like you're not if you don't have a Sega CD and or like the money to buy a copy of it. But if you're willing to emulate it, it's definitely worth checking out just for
I
the
mean,
interest.
I wasn't gonna buy it. Let's not
True,
get crazy here.
true. I was talking more the general viewers if we have any collectors listening.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah. Other than that, though, like version wise, like they're all basically the same game.
yeah.
And the game itself is a very of its time cinematic platformer that's very frustrating to play.
It's a game I have a ton of respect
Hmm.
for what it is.
It-
And I can't deny it being a groundbreaking, like influential game.
yeah,
But at the same time, trying to play it nowadays with a modern perspective is is rather difficult to do, which is why I kind of went for the remake, because the
Hmm.
remake is better to play, albeit it is buggy as shit. Which makes sense. Ubisoft published it.
yeah.
Like it's kind of its own weird, funky beast in and of itself, but it is much more easily playable from as I said, a modern perspective. And it is the same game. It's like the same story, same characters. There is some like extra stuff in there, but it's nothing that's really gonna like blow anybody away. And I know a lot of people did not care for this remake, and having beat it, I kind of get why. It doesn't have the same. I hate to say the word soul, but it doesn't have that same sort of inspiration that the original had. It's kind of missing that. Oh, we're trying to do something like really cool and unique. This just feels like a hey, remember Flashback kind of game. That's what it feels like to me.
It's a how are you doing, fellow kids?
It's like you knew that one really cool dude in high school, and then you see him like 20 years later, and you're like, oh hey, how you been? And then you're like, oh we should, and you do the whole like, oh we should hang out, but like you never really hang out with your old friends, because if you do, then you realize like, oh this is this is rough, man. Like,
Yeah.
just things change, you know?
There's a reason why this game's sequel, Fade to Black, is not held in well regard.
Or its prequel, Flashback 2.
Yeah, that's new. Like that is a
That came out last year.
yeah, and I haven't heard great things.
It was done by Microids, who were the company that did the Flashback, the newest remaster as well. Also a French company, and the remake published by Ubisoft, also a French company. They're
And
keeping it.
And Ubisoft did Turtles in Time Reshelled. It's all coming full circle.
Oh boy, yeah. And Microids they're weird. I don't know. Like whenever I see their logo in the corner, I'm like, I'm not sure how this is gonna go.
They published the Oddworld collection on Switch. I know that
they did, which is fine. I know they've done they did that like Alfred Hitchcock Vertigo game that came out not too long ago. Beyond a Steel Sky, which I believe is a sequel to Beneath a Steel Sky, which is like a really cool like point and click adventure game from like the PC era. They did that. They published that remake of 13 that was not good.
Yeah.
That remake not being good really broke my heart because the original 13 is a fucking cool game. They've done like those like Asterix and Obelix like XXL like remasters from like the GameCube era. Again, French. I've been meaning to sit down and try those because I've heard good things about those games. Just a lot of weird stuff. They're just a weird company, you know?
Yeah. Speaking of other Flashback things, there was actually a remake planned for the Game Boy Advance, but it was never released. But there is a ROM of it out there that's mostly done, and it has the most garish color palette you'll ever see in a game.
I need to see this.
It is.
Oh, is it Flashback Legend?
Yeah.
That was supposed to be the sequel to Fade to Black. It was going to be like essentially Flashback 3.
Yeah, it has the most garish color palette I've ever seen in it.
Oof. This looks weird, man.
Yeah. I took one look at that and went, yeah, I'm glad it didn't come out.
It looks like they superimposed the original Conrad like rotoscope animation on this weird new GBA looking backgrounds and enemies. It looks funky as hell.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad it didn't come out just because it doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't look good at all, but I may give this a try.
Yeah, you can find the ROM. It's basically complete.
Yeah. I mean, I am playing it's not really a ROM hack, but I started playing have you heard of Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit?
Yes. Yeah.
I've been playing that, and that's fucking good. Some good shit.
Well, it's almost like you take some decent level designs and put them in a much more competent engine, and hey, it's a good game.
Yeah. The original Triple Trouble, it just kind of blends in with all those Game Gear Sonic games. It's perfectly fine, you know, but none of them ever stuck out to me personally. But playing the 16-bit version, I'm like, oh, this is cool. I like this.
Yeah, it's like it had great level designs. It just like the 8-bit Sonic engine wasn't very good.
No, and Sega didn't really prioritize handheld games the same way Nintendo did.
No.
Yeah, so that's why we never got Flashback on the Game Gear. Could you imagine a Game Gear Flashback? Oof.
It would have been something, that's for sure.
It would have been something, man.
So I guess going into reception for this game, unless you had anything else you wanted to talk about.
It's weird how this game goes from like a jungle to like a space station to a game show to Earth.
Yeah.
And then it ends with you fighting essentially a mother brain, like a hive mind mother brain, because the game is about you like erase your memory and then you're trying to get it back. And then as you're like getting it back, you're trying to unravel some weird, like, I guess a conspiracy around this like weird like hive mind thing that's trying to like take over people or something. Because you kill like an auxiliary brain and then a master brain. Literally like a master brain, like mother brain kind of thing. It's the story, it feels like there is something here, but storytelling in video games was not really at a great spot yet in
Yeah.
92, especially for what this game is trying to do.
This story is very Blade Runner sci-fi-esque, like
Yes, huge Blade Runner influence.
which was of the style at the time, as they say. Um, it's not bad. Like it's like I said, it's like it's that cheesy kind of like popcorn kind of cringe that I really like. in
Yeah,
this era.
and I love that your main character Conrad is always in like a brown jacket and blue jeans, and he's like shooting these weird futuristic looking soldiers and like robots and shit.
Yeah.
So
Another fun thing too I just noticed is the 3DO version was rated 17. 3DO's weird rating system.
really?
For graphic violence and alcohol use.
Oh, there is alcohol in the game, but like
But
I don't know,
then,
violence isn't like, I mean, it's not like Doom,
but
you know.
but then the Switch version is E10.
Times change, man.
Oh yeah, it's just funny to me. Um, so reception wise, this game was critically acclaimed when it came out. Like
Oh, absolutely.
every single version had like highest like high ratings. Like the lowest rating I see is EGM gave the Sega CD version a 7.5, which is hilarious because that's arguably the best version. They didn't even rate the best like the Genesis version or 3DO. This is on CDI, and CDI gave it a 92. Good for them.
I couldn't imagine playing this game on CDI.
I couldn't either. I like how CDI rated their own game. They were like, "It's good. It's great."
Please buy our console, we beg of you.
It has Nintendo kind of.
Yeah,
Um,
kind of.
yeah, and it's one of those games that is very well remembered, and people generally still seem to like it from what I've heard.
I mean, I asked a lot of people, a lot of old people that we know. I'm like, what do you guys think about Flashback? And most of them were like, yeah, it was cool at the time, but I can't imagine it's aged very well. That's what they all said. And I think that's a fair assumption to make on this game. Like, it's cool, but it hasn't really aged the best.
Yeah, like it's one of those games that like inherently isn't bad, but
No.
it's when you compare it to like other games of its type that I think did it better, like Out of This World or like Out of This World's spiritual successor, Heart of Darkness, or even Prince of Persia to a degree. It's like they just kind of did it better.
Yeah. I think they just had a better idea of incorporating this sort of cinematic platformer thing with just level design that complements it better than, say, a Flashback. But Flashback, I think, was trying to make more of an action game out of it, and I can respect that.
Flashback had it much more of a defined like idea behind it. Like they were trying to tell something here.
Oh, absolutely.
Which the difference between this and then say Out of This World is like Out of This World is a very much it has a story, but the story is very much kind of you kind of experience it as you go kind of game.
Yeah.
This one is really trying to be like a story. And for the most part, I think it does a good job. Like the story is interesting. It's just the game itself is kind of frustrating.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think if it's something that if we had like more time, I probably could have like tried to figure it out, but I just decided to play the easier to understand remake because that was kind of an easier playthrough.
Yeah, like I've most reviews of this game that I've seen because I watched a couple of YouTube reviews just to get like different impressions on it. Most of the reviews all said like the game once you figure out the controls is perfectly fun in a decent time, but it's
for sure.
You have to get over that opening hurdle, and I think that's kind of this game's biggest downfall.
Yeah, I would agree. Like that opening jungle level isn't really the best level to sort of introduce what it's trying to do. Because once you get past that jungle level and you get into like the space station area, it becomes a lot easier to understand.
Yeah, it's It's this game is very much a product of its time.
It does that thing that a lot of games I think from this era did, which is, oh, we're afraid of the retail market, so we're going to make the first level like really hard for no reason, so that so that when you buy it and you eventually figure out how to get past that level, you can just then breeze through the rest of the game no problem.
Oh,
I
actually,
it was very common for the early 90s.
I did just think of this. One cool thing about Flashback, it's only present in the Genesis and Sega CD versions of the game, but those games came packaged with a manual that actually had a like a storyline comic adaptation that kind of was like an introduction to the game's plot. Marvel actually did it, so it's something that's cool. It was not included with the 3DO version, so
yeah, and the remake has much more extensive cutscenes, and I think they incorporate those comics like into the remake, because there'll be bits where it cuts away to more kind of like comic style drawings where they go more in depth on like the story and everything. So they might have thought about that while they were doing it, you know.
I didn't look into who the artist was, but like looking at the art, it looks very 90s Marvel, so it was cool.
Yeah. So cool stuff.
So yeah, I guess now going into must play, okay, stay away. This one to me is very much like Alone in the Dark, where it's a game that you can appreciate, but I don't really think it's worth playing anymore.
Are you trying to say stay away?
Not stay away. I kind of want to say like this is kind of a game that I say like I think for Alone in the Dark I said something like casually observe, which I don't want to reuse that. So I'm gonna say like I'm not gonna say play it. I'm gonna say stay away, but maybe watch like a walkthrough or something and just like see what was going on.
I don't want to say stay away. I think I respect this game too much to say that. I would give it an okay. I think it is okay. If you wanna try this game out, I would say get the Genesis or the Sega CD ROM and try it for yourself. You know, because who knows? I get the sense that this game may click more with a very specific kind of person.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not me. You know, like this game, when I was playing this version of the game, it felt like when you go on like a first date with somebody and when you're done, you're like, we didn't really click, you know? And then later on they text you saying, hey, I don't think it's going to work out. And you're like, oh, thank God. I was thinking the same thing too. Woo! You know, it feels like we mutually understand that we're probably not made for each other, but that's okay. You know, and I think this game is okay. Like, again, for it being something different and pushing the medium forward, I think it's for that. I have a great amount of admiration for it. But as far as like the nitty gritty playing the game, I don't really know if I can recommend it. I mean, if you want to try more of a cinematic style platformer, like I would recommend Another World. I would recommend Heart of Darkness, the original Prince of Persia. I mean, heck, Limbo and Inside, if you want a more modern representation of that style, but done through more of like how do we make something like this these days? You know what I mean? I mean, even Blackthorn would be an interesting one to do. Like the cinematic platformer genre, like the few games that encompass it, they're all kind of interesting.
Yeah.
You know? So and there's probably bound to be one that you like. Like hell, just looking at it, there's one called Weird Dreams, which I've never heard of before, but it was like a Commodore Amiga kind of game. So that one's probably aged like milk, but you know, like most games from that era. So
you know what? I thought of a goofy one. I'm gonna say this game it's just okay, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, sure.
There we go.
Oh yeah, I hear it's a more modern game. The Way is a bit of a cinematic platformer kind of game. So
I have that on Switch. I have yet to play it.
I think I have it too. I've been meaning to play it. I've heard good things. Like it's not amazing, but it's fine.
See, when that game came out, it was right around the same time as the goddamn Uganda Knuckles meme. So everyone was just like, "It is the way," and I was just like, "God fucking damn it!" I was like, "Exactly." I was like, "God
uh,
fucking damn it!"
God, we drove that meme into the fucking ground.
Yes, we did. Like most
Oh,
memes nowadays.
boy. Yeah, because whenever like a good one comes out, it just goes away. Like that one like weird Star Wars one where it was like that like what was it in Chile or whatever, where they incorporate the ads into like watching the movie or whatever, and it's like that was funny, and then people just tore that shit into the ground. So after a week, it was like, oh, it's not funny anymore.
Yeah, like most memes just nowadays don't last because they're just overused.
Exactly. Um, So there you go. Yeah, basically, if you want to play a cinematic platformer game, if it says Elik Chahai on it, just play that one.
I will say this every time: Heart of Darkness.
Hard Darkness is cool. I like Heart of Darkness. Like, it's a shame it doesn't have a 3DO version, so we can't play it. But
It's a little too powerful for 3DO.
Yeah, but it's like a cool game. It's a hidden gem for sure. I think.
It's my favorite of this genre. So.
Yeah, and then I didn't realize this. The game From Dust was also Eric Shahi, like that weird god sim thing, which I've never played, but now that I know that he did it, I kind of want to try it. I can't remember if it's backwards compatible or not, but I'll have to find out. Because that game looks kind of neat.
No, 100%. This is I hate when it's like a game that like isn't bad, but like you're just kind of like meh on it. Like,
yeah, like I'll always say like I respect it. You know, it's a piece of video game history, and I think that is important. But much like say trying to play the original Pitfall, you know,
yes,
like you can respect it for being a very groundbreaking game and seeing where everything started. Even then, I'd say Pitfall is a much better game to play. Actually, like it holds up better than you'd think. Hell,
to me,
even Pitfall 2. Pitfall 2 is fucking cool.
Yeah. To me, like out of all the games we've played, the one that I can think of that kind of best describes this one is probably Alone in the Dark, where it's like,
yeah,
you can understand why they were acclaimed at the time, but like nowadays, you also can see that they haven't held up as well.
But I would play Flashback before Alone in the Dark.
Yeah, Flashback has aged better than Alone in the Dark has, but it's the same kind of principle. It's not like D, where that game just aged badly and like there's no reason to play it.
Yeah, that game kind of aged like dirt. That's another one that's like I can kind of respect it for what it's trying to do, but it's a game that was immediately outdated when Resident Evil came out.
Yeah.
So whereas Flashback never had like that one game that completely killed its relevance. Like it never had that. So
yeah, it was kind of just a genre that just died off.
Yeah, because it's a hard one to do right. You know, in like a 2D realm. You know, even like say considering Limbo a cinematic platformer feels very like a consolation prize to the genre because you can tell it's really not going for that. It definitely has its own vibe, but you know, and I love Limbo's great. Love that game.
The art style in particular.
Love it.
And you can tell too that like in 3D, these games just don't quite work the same way. Like,
yeah, like this game in 3D would be like say the original Tomb Raider, or you know, if you wanted to make a straight line from this to say Uncharted, I think you could make that line.
You know what the best example of what this game would be like in 3D is? Prince of Persia 3D.
Oh, like Sands of Time?
No, the original Prince of Persia 3D. Do you remember? It was on Dreamcast under the name Arabian Nights.
Yeah, I never played that. I know of it.
So the Dreamcast port is surprisingly better, but still not great. The original PC version by Broderbund, though, is like oof.
Yeah, because I've played a bit of the original Prince of Persia, and I thought it was neat. You know, I had the same reaction to it I did when I looked at the solar eclipse. I went, "Oh, that's neat."
Yeah,
you know. So because again, Prince of Persia it's not really an action game; it's more of like a stealthy adventure kind of game. So I think in that regard, the cinematic platformer style works far and away better.
Yes. Honestly, that's why when they did the Sands of Time, they made it like a flow-based platformer rather than like a straight-up platformer.
Yeah, I feel so bad because I feel like I missed the boat on Sands of Time because I never played it when it was new. And by the time I got around to actually playing it, I was already into Assassin's Creed, which is,
Yeah.
what Prince of Persia kind of molded into. And I've attempted Sands of Time like 2 or 3 times, and I recognize it's a very good game, but it just doesn't click with me. And it could have just been I didn't play it at the right time.
That's probably it because it's a great game, but it definitely was. It was more. It was more impressive at the time it came out than like it would be
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah, because at the time people loved it, and I knew people who were really into it. And I think if I ever tried to say rent it for the GameCube back in the day, they didn't have it, you know. And then eventually they did Warrior Within and Two Thrones and all that, which take the series in a little bit of a different direction, I'm told. Um,
Well, the
you know,
the the Warrior Within made it dark for no reason, and then they
it's the Shadow the Hedgehog of that
yeah,
series.
and then Two Thrones they did a really cool idea with like the dark side and light side princes, which was a really nice way of fixing that and it's keeping it at the same time.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, the original game to me, like it was like the first game that really introduced that like flow designed platformer where like it's not so much about precision, it's more about flow. And like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
because
style of platformer that doesn't really exist as much anymore, but it still is here every now and then.
it was like the first game to do kind of like the parkour system, and you have like a rewind kind of. There's a lot of things about it that were really cool for its time, but I remember like trying to play it from a modern perspective. I'm like, I don't know what the big deal is.
Yeah, because
You
we've
know
had just better games in that style since then.
exactly. And if slash when that big old remake that they were making for it comes out, I will play it because
Hmm.
I want to see like if they can take the original Santa Time and modernize it. I think it would be really cool. But who knows what the state of that remake is in at the moment.
Yeah, considering Ubisoft and like games, like who knows?
I don't think they've given up on it, but I know when they first put it out, I think they were hoping it would just be kind of a whatever release. And then the fan backlash was so strong that they're like, okay, we need to do this properly.
Yeah,
So we will do it
and
properly.
especially because that new Prince of Persia like 2D game came out and was very well received from what I've heard.
I
So now
need
there's even
I need to play that. I've heard really good things.
hmm, now there's even more like hype behind it though. So I'm like, okay, they got to definitely do it right.
Yeah, and I've heard a rumor that a new Prince of Persia is going to get announced this year, like more like a roguelike Prince of Persia game. So
Well, that's interesting.
yeah, so it says to me that Ubisoft maybe they're looking at their original IP and going, we should do more with this stuff. You know,
Maybe we'll get a new
maybe
Rayman.
yeah, maybe they're taking influence from when EA recently did the whole like, oh, we're not going to license IPs as much. We're just going to use our original stuff. Maybe that'll cause them to dig through their back catalog and be like, what can we bring out of here? Because I know why EA did that with the licensing thing, because they don't have to pay FIFA anymore, and their EA Sports FC club sold just as well as any other FIFA did,
Yep.
but they didn't have to pay that licensing fee, so they made a lot more fucking money off of it. So
Yep. And they can still release shitty Madden games because the Madden fans will still buy them.
that's the thing. If they didn't have the NFL license and were just called like Madden Football, I think it would take a game or two for casual people to realize they're not NFL games. Like I swear to God, people
Yeah.
would notice it right away.
Probably.
Yeah. So, but that's a whole nother can of worms. But
Um,
but hey, if that causes EA to dig through and we get to say the Dead Space 2 remake, please, can we have that?
New Road
Maybe
Rash, maybe.
new Mercenaries, please, 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 because EA has a lot of cool licenses or a lot of cool original IPs I'd like to see come back, and same with Ubisoft. Who knows? Maybe they'll actually finish Beyond Good and Evil 2.
Yeah, and then Michelle and then
What the
then
fuck is up with that game? What is up
Michelle
with that?
Michelle Ancel is like one of the most like he's almost as bad as the guy from fucking 3D Realms with like how particular
Pitchford?
he is.
Randy Pitchford?
No, that was Gearbox, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, he's also an asshole. I can't remember the 3D Realms guy.
George Broussard, I believe. Is his name.
Broussard, yes,
Yeah.
yes, Broussard, yeah.
He's such a a fucking perfectionist that it takes fucking forever to make a game.
Yeah, because if Beyond Good and Evil 2 had come out already, people would probably like it. But I think at this point, if it comes out, it's gonna get dogpiled on. But I imagine it will be a better end product than Duke Nukem Forever.
True. I mean, I still say Duke Nukem Forever. If you think of it as a game that should have come out in 1996, it's great. But when you think in a context that it did not come out in 1996, it shows.
If it came out, when was that big, like the Vegas trailer? Was that 2001?
Yep.
If it came out then, it would have been fine.
I am happy that the guy who pre-ordered it did get his copy.
That's an amazing. I love that. Gearbox hooked him up, so respect.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess final thoughts. Because this game doesn't save at all, there's no memory manager, but you don't need it, so you're fine.
Exactly.
For next week, we're not gonna get into our next game just yet. We're actually thinking about doing kind of a fun episode where we're gonna. I don't know if we agreed on doing this yet. We kind of played with the idea, but we were thinking about splitting the episode in half, having the first half be Doom story time, and then the second half be Family Feud, just because.
Sure, why not? Sure, why not?
We'll knock out 2 games at once, so I can tell the hilarious story of Doom on 3DO, and then we can talk about Family Feud.
And I can talk about the great game show game.
All right, yeah. So we'll do that for next week as a little breather episode while we plan our next game, because we had a few ideas we wanted to throw around.
Yes, but, there is one special one we want to do, a very special one, but I think we may need to do a little planning before we do it. So
yes, exactly. But yeah, until next time though, guys, thanks for joining us on the 3DO Experience. 3DO Experience can be found on all the major podcasting platforms, particularly Apple Podcast and Spotify. You can find all of our links at linktree/thebarber.who games, and you can find the podcast now on YouTube with a video version that also will come out. You'll see me disappear this time. Hi, guys. And you can join the GNC Podcast Network Discord server to find all things GNC, Video Experience, Geek Addicts, Talk Gaming, Anime, and all sorts of crazy stuff. And tonight, Thrak will be streaming, so be sure to check that out as well.
Yes, I'll be streaming at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, twitch.tv/Thrak94. We are going through the Sega Genesis catalog. So it's been a lot of fun, and we're going to keep doing it till I get sick of it.
Yeah, I'll try to pop in. I'm sure Casey will pop in. All the guys from the SuperPod Discord will probably be there.
Oh, yeah. A lot of fun times on there.
Yeah, so should be a good time. And with that, everyone, we will see you all later.
Bye-bye.
If you're not playing on a 3DO system, what are you playing with?